energy of the color and imagery goes beyond the verbal. And that is one of the reasons why there are many cultures who use a form of mandala for initiation, for meditation, for teaching, and it's beyond the words of the master or the priest or the adept.
I would like to welcome Roni Reisler. She is an incredible Akashic Record consultant and has an incredible gift that has been given to her with that, and that is creating mandalas. And I can't wait to talk to you about this, Roni. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and simply can't wait for us to just start flowing with our words and thoughts and information.
Yeah. So I just want to give a brief history. You and I became connected because of the Akashic Records. And we happened to open the records with the same process, and which we have little, for some reason I'm hearing the word subset, and I am in my records right now. So yes. You and I will both be going back and forth, jumping in and out of the records, because that's kind of how we do our thing. But because there's so many different ways and processes that people connect with the Akashic Records, that you and I do it the same way, and that's how we became acquainted.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about your history and how you got started with the Akashic Records?
Well, actually, I tell this story frequently. I actually became interested in the Akashic Records because, believe it or not, my brother-in-law put his back out. And he went to a chiropractor who told him that this amazing woman from Texas was coming into Chicago to teach a seminar, and that the chiropractor said to him, "You really have to go to this seminar." Yeah. So it was my brother-in-law who first took the Akashic Records class, the level 1, with Mary Parker. Okay. And at that time, it was taught in a different way than what it is taught now. However, we still use the sacred prayer method, which you are familiar with and which we all use amongst us. So he had to practice. He had to practice opening another person's records as part of the protocol to learning how to do it. So he started practicing on my sister, his wife, and then my sister said, "Oh, you got to talk to Alan because he's doing this thing and he needs to practice." So I called my brother-in-law and I said, "I hear you're doing this thing. Why don't we get together? We'll make an appointment." So he gave me a consultation. And Lisa, it was a remarkable experience, partially because the words that came out of his mouth and the way he expressed what information was coming to him was so different from the way he normally is. Mm. And I kept trying to adjust to this. And finally I said, "Where did you learn how to do this? Because whatever is coming through you is something, there's different about it. There's difference." And he said, "Well, there's this lady and so on and so on." And I said, "Well, okay, the next time this woman comes into town, you better tell me because I'm going to be there." Mm. And that was over 30 years ago. So then my sister and I went together to the class. Then when she came back to Chicago, where we originally are from, and the rest is history. I mean, my sister absolutely fell in love with her and the work immediately. I was a little more pulled back, but my sister and I are opposites. And, we talked about it. Mary and I talked about it. And she said, well, she gave me some pointers. And then we were off to the races, as a teacher of mine has said.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, we flew into Texas to work with her privately at her home over a period of 2 years. We had we'd hang around in our pajamas and just open the records and read all day, and talk. And then she would do something called a metaphysical tea party. And she would call people up to come to the house to sit in her living room and have them wait to receive consultations. And she was giving us this practice, you see.
Mm.
So it was a very special and very particular kind of time.
Yeah.
But that was the initiation in the beginning of it all.
Yeah. And what a great gift to be in Mary's presence and to be able to do that.
Yes.
So 30 years later, I know that, I'm saying I have a feeling that you have had some interesting experiences with this process and learning and shifting and changing as we go through this. As we start out as beginners, we evolve through time, and by having the experiences and the information that's provided to us and whatnot. But that leads me into this incredible gift that you've been given. And I'm taking a little detour here because I think it's really important for people to understand that we're all different. And, we receive information differently. Every individual that has some form of intuitive gift, whether it's being able to tap into the Akashic field or any other source of information. We have different guides. We are given different abilities. We may focus on different areas. We're all different. And so I really think it's important for people to understand that and not to compare, well, this person does it this way, so you're supposed to do it this way. And if you don't do it the same, there's something wrong. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. And interestingly enough, that shows up in the mandalas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and here we go. there's the intro. So you have this fabulous gift, and I just want you to know that I've seen your work, and my jaw drops. It's amazing. It was amazing. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to provide some photographs that you have provided to me. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to have everybody be able to see them, but this is something that we'll talk about at the end of this program. So tell me a little bit about, so first of all, now that I'm skipping around here, let's discuss how you pronounce. Is it mandala or mandala?
Well, originally I said mandala, and I used it for several years. And I was not a stranger to mandalas because we have a relative who was interested in Asian art. So we were exposed to Asian art and mandalas before we ever learned how to read the Akashic Records through our family history. Mm-hmm. So I always said mandalas. And then I ran into someone who had actually been to India for some time. And the person corrected me, and she said, no, it's not mandalas, it's mandala. And I went, okay, we'll try that. And as I discussed the nature of the mandala, I discovered that some people mistook the name for Nelson Mandela, who is a famous African leader. So that was just sort of a fragment of how are we going to work with this to be clear about what we're discussing. So generally I say mandala because I'm trying to avoid that confusion. But once there's a discussion about it, and then later on someone said, oh no, I was in India and it was actually mandala. So apparently there is more than one pronunciation for it. And as long as we understand, as long as there's an acknowledgement of what the subject matter is.
Right. So if I say it one way and you say it a different way, then you people that are listening, please forgive us. Because I think it's a word that we're conditioned, however we were taught to say, that's the way that we say it. But I want everybody to understand that there's a different pronunciations, probably depending on what part of the world you're in as well.
Yeah. Yes.
So, okay, so this leads into the next question, and I'm not really sure where I should go, but I'm going to start just with, because I've got so many questions. I'm going to start with, what is a mandala? Mandala.
Okay. Well, the word manda in several languages, particularly Sanskrit, means the essence, or the center, or the seated place. And there are several other words that are translated into some Tibetan languages and so on. But basically, manda is the core center, or the source, or the seated source. La is circle. And la usually means the parameter which encompasses or encases the essence that is fusing out from the core or the center. And so when put together, it is mandala. It is actually a visual representation of sound and light. So the purpose of putting the visualization into the material world is to offer a blueprint or a pathway to realization and enlightenment.
And so, which I think that actually ties into the Akashic field very fittingly. I think that that's exactly, that's the energy that's coming from that field anyway. And so how did you discover, okay, well, let's go. How did you discover that you had this ability? And then you also, the artwork is incredible. So what is your background, and how did you even develop the talent or the perfectionism, if that's a word, of doing what you do?
Well, as I said, I was familiar with mandalas before I learned how to access the Akashic Records, but I didn't put them together at first. And somehow someone mentioned a book, and it was written by Dr. Judith Cornell, and I've got the book right here, and it says Mandalas, the healing path. And they said, oh, you got to see this book. There are beautiful drawings in there, and so on and so forth. So I started to read it, and I realized that, as I just explained, this pathway to light, to realization, to meditation, to upliftment, and to beauty is very much what the Akashic Records are doing in my experience. So I thought there must be a way that I can do this. Now, I had a background in design, in fabric design and textile design. So I was working with design and color and textile and texture elements. And I did some drawing. So I was already sort of wiggling in through the fence there. And I mentioned, we were on a retreat with Mary Parker in Texas. And I said to her, I said, I wonder if I can do this together. Somehow it feels, there was starting to be a sense of merging. And that image that sort of comes in behind the eyes when you start seeing some kind of information. At least that's part of how I receive. And she said, well, go ahead and do it. Mary was a very direct person. I said, well, what do I do? She says, well, here, I have some paper in the drawer, and here are a couple of pens. Sit down and do something. Open the records and do something. So And there was just a couple of ballpoint pens and a pencil and some stationery. And I did. I sat down, I opened the Rex. I said, all right, well, what am I going to do? So I put the circle down. I took a plate. I took a plate out of the cabinet and stuck it down on the paper and drew a circle. And I started, whatever was coming through, I sort of, put down there and everything. And I said, I think I need some more of something to work with. So we went to Walmart and went into the craft section and bought some little bottles of paint and a couple of felt tip pens and just a few things. And she kept saying, okay, sit down and do it. Just do it. And I did the first few colored mandalas right there at that retreat. And then I saw the fusion. I felt it. You feel this alignment coming over you and from within you, and you start to absorb the beauty of it through the eyes as a vehicle and realize that there's something to this that's beyond a painting or a fabric design or a textile. Not that those do not carry the creative source, but this was going beyond that. And so when I got home, I checked and I discovered there was a retreat for mandalas at Mount Madonna ashram in California. And I signed up, got an airplane ticket, and flew to the ashram to study with Dr. Judith Cornell. And that's how it happened.
Mm-hmm. So fascinating. So what, I have so many questions. I've got 15 questions going through my head. And I guess what my first question now is, how does it make you feel when you're creating the mandalas? Okay, well, and let me go back. See, I've got too many questions. So did you start out just creating them for yourself?
Yes. I just whatever came through, I started to do. And it's in studying at the ashram, which put us into a certain kind of protocol. For example, you woke up at dawn and you did yoga, and then you took a vow of silence until you had something to eat, and then you came back, and until you put pencil to paper, you were not allowed, you were in silence. So there was drawing forward a meditative state. So in adhering to being in an ashram for, 6 days and nights completely with the room open, you could go 24/7, definitely shifted my perception of the depth of where this could go. I didn't really, now we did make mandalas for each other in the class, but always we started with something for ourselves. What was to be released? What was to be discovered? What is the best thing to meditate on? Those kinds of questions were asked in the class, and then you drew a little mandala to answer those questions. So there was this feeling of alignment and then sort of a pulling away and then alignment again. As it comes now, I open the records of other people to do their mandala. And so what is up for them in the records, I open their records, is what partially I experience when I'm starting to create the sketch and the blueprint for their specific mandala.
So I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this question. What do you feel when you're creating? Do you feel the energy flowing? Do you feel, it's like, do you just feel like you kind of go into a zone? And you're just doing this unconsciously? Do you feel an energy that is creating what you're creating? Creating what you're creating? Do you understand my question?
Yes, it's all of the above.
Okay.
Some of it depends on the person for whom the mandala is being created. And sometimes there's a flood of images coming through, and there's a pulling up of my saying to the masters, okay, wait a minute, how do I do that? That's wow, let's show me what I can do here to do this. So maybe that's a little bit of Roni personality coming in, going, oh wow, wait a minute. Other times something springs forward and there's this feeling of it's perfect, it's beautiful, and it's perfect. And there's this feeling that it definitely connects to the person who is receiving the mandala. And you've seen some of the mandalas and you've noticed that they're all different. Mm-hmm. Now, certain symbols may reoccur, and they're kind of universal, but they may have different meanings for that person. But there's a combination of energy, but there is an excitement of first finding the color that this mandala is going to be presented, which is really the light wave that the mandala is coming in on, and then what that is and why, and then anchoring the center of the you get the circle on and you anchor the center of the mandala in and start with the center always as much as possible. Sometimes not, it doesn't, but usually it's start with the center, bring in the light.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm so fascinated. So how do you do this? So if you're doing this for somebody else, they contract you to create this beautiful piece of mandala, artwork mandala. And then when you open their records and you create, what is the information that's provided to the person that has asked you to create this for them?
That's really a very interesting question. I do get their permission to open their records first. I will not create a mandala without somebody's permission, unless it's, for example, a gift. And then I explain to the person who's giving the gift that I will do this through my own records and ask permission to receive what is appropriate for the highest good for this person. That doesn't happen very often, actually. Or they say, okay, I'm giving this person a gift, and I say, well, can I ask them for permission? So it's not a surprise anymore, right? It's, and usually they say, oh yeah, why don't you connect with them and ask, when I receive the permission sheet, which is very similar to a permission or a release sheet for a consultation, something starts to move in, something starts to work. And then the color wave that the mandala is going to come in on comes first. So I start going through papers. And I have a collection of papers, but sometimes the color isn't there. So I have to go out and search for the color until I look at it and I say, okay, that's it. And then symbols come through, images. And sometimes I'm led to actually look up and research why that particular thing has come up. For example, right now I have one on the table that has bluebell flowers, which I've never had before in a mandala. So I went, bluebells, wow, okay, that's kind of a wildflower, right? So I did look it up, and it turns out that it's a symbol of humility and, constant love and, everlasting love. And there's also a mythology surrounding it, that it's a fairy flower, that fairies are present where there are bluebells. So these are two things that when I do the discourse at the end of the mandala, I do a written discourse saying what these symbols are to you and what they may be for you, then likely those pieces of information will come forward and say, these flowers are here because they represent humility and everlasting love. Mm-hmm. And it happens that I know a little bit, I know the person a little bit, and that's true about her. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think of that first. It's the symbol that comes forward in the color. And then I say, okay, why? Or should I, why is this here? Or how do I put this in is another question. Mm-hmm. And that all comes first before the final dissertation or verbal consultation happens.
So I know this is kind of a silly question, but it's not, because it's what's coming to me. What the question is that's coming to me to ask you is, what is the energy that it holds? Do you understand what that question is?
Are you asking about the energy it holds for me, or
no, for the person that's receiving it?
Okay. What I've discovered through this journey of establishing or creating, constructing, as some scholars say, the mandala for the person is foremost is the beauty. And sometimes the person who is asking for the mandala has not yet really resonated with their own inner beauty. Mm-hmm. And the clarity of their soul and their connection. And all these symbols are like guideposts to say, look, you have the quality of this symbol, of this color, of this is healing you, or this is a pathway for you, or a stepping stone, let's say. And it's beautiful, and it's elegant, and it's bright, and it's sparkly, and it's shiny. I use a lot of shiny and light refracting materials, which incidentally, unfortunately, do not show up in the photographs. And it's always like, so far, with blessings of God, everyone has really realized at some level that this is part of them. This is their beauty, their inner beauty. And so the longer the mandala is worked on and constructed, the greater the beauty, and the light comes through and going, wow, yes, wow, that's oh yeah, this, okay, more of this, less of that, let's put this in, because it's got to be beautiful, because that's what this soul is. Mm-hmm. So then there's this feeling of excitement within me. And I'm talking to myself and to the record keepers, and, say, oh, yeah, okay, that's great. Oh, yes. Oh, how do I do it? Oh, yeah, all right, I'll try this, and that's the experience of it.
Well, I think that you kind of touched on something that's extremely important for us humans at this particular time. And what you said was that this particular creation is it holds the energy of who the individual is that you're creating this for. And we are such a mind-driven creation. And we forget this connection that we have within us because of our stories, because of our belief systems, because what we have created to believe. And there's not a whole lot of us that can only see that beautiful resonating light that lies within us that connects us to all things. Yeah. And so being able to hold on to visualize, to feel the energy that comes from what you create is a growth tool. It helps us to feel the energy that comes from that, but also it serves as a constant reminder of who we truly are. And it's so significant. And, and I'm, you can see behind me my little knickknacks and whatnot. But artwork is extremely important to me personally, because when you see something that's been created and it resonates with you, it helps you to open up your heart. It grows in a way that is this thing that's spiritually connected to the truth of who we are. And when you, as a human, when we can hold on to, when we can see, when we can feel the vibration of what somebody else has created, it allows that connection to become one. Not only are you connecting to the individual that created it, but you're connecting to the truest essence of who you are. And we're in this time that is putting this in our face so strongly of getting back to our core essence. And what you're providing is that energy and that understanding and that knowing of who we truly are. And so what a great gift, that this is, to be able to provide to other people so that they can see the truth of the essence of who they are in that particular vibration, so that they can be reminded that this is the truth, who you are. It's not what the mind has led you to believe.
Yes,
so
right.
yeah.
The energy of the color and imagery goes beyond the verbal.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why there are many cultures who use a form of mandala for initiation, for meditation, for teaching, and it's beyond the words of the master or the priest or the adept or whatever you want to say. And also, mandalas occur in a lot of different cultures
Yeah.
and nature.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually surrounded by mandalas in many different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
all of them contain that unfolding and that growth.
Yeah. For example, a flower.
Oh, biggest one, yes, yes.
Let's just make it plain.
Yeah, or the Native American medicine wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you name any others?
In Islam, there are prayers. And in the Jewish religion, there is the wedding contract is usually a circle with Hebrew symbols and illustrations. So there's a binding, a circle, a containment of relationship and energy and love. Um, they occur also in, well, we know the Tibetan, the Buddhist, and the Hindu tradition, where they are the strongest and most possibly the oldest. In the Japanese culture, they are also used for both Shinto and nature. Um, Hildegard von Bingen, the Catholic nun who was in a convent and was so forcefully led to draw Christian mandalas, pictures of the creation of the earth and the universe, that when the priest told her to stop doing it because it was a sin, she became terribly ill and took to her bed because she could not. They prohibited her from allowing this energy to come through her and be visualized. And finally, they allowed her to do it, and she produced at least several of these really amazing mandalas of Christian image, what we might call Christian imagery, that are quite beautiful. And she composed music. The creative force was moving through her so strongly that she could not survive without expressing it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that leads into a whole different subject, but I'm going to touch on it, and that's our creativity. And,
yes.
And being able to understand how, we again, our culture has a tendency to control our creativity.
Mm-hmm.
It has, it puts guidelines around what should be creative and what shouldn't be, and who shouldn't be and who should be. And the way that we've been for some reason, the words constructed is coming to me. The way that we've been constructed is, is to fall under certain guidelines and belief systems that society has created. And, a lot of our creativity is stifled because of the belief systems of you need to have a certain occupation. You
Yes.
need to fall into this, this particular idea of money. Maybe if you're creative, then you're not going to be as financially successful as what society says you should be. That old saying from the very, how many left-handed individuals have been forced to become right-handed when we
Yes.
know the person that's left-handed is the creative one, that's their natural way of being. And society has pushed us into changing the sides of brains that we function to fit in. And so being able to really tap into who we are, our natural state, and get into this flow and rhythm, which I understand what you're doing. And the stories that I hear about monks, is that whatever you do, it's kind of this flowing of energy. It's the message that you're receiving, which is how you create this mandala. And it's all coming from the energy that's within you. It's the guided message. It's the truth of who we are. It's what the guides want us to hear and to reflect. And when we have a tendency to have that stifled, it's an exactly opposite of who we are. And it's what I'm hearing is disease. It causes a
Yes.
disease, within us because we're holding and constricting this. And
Yes.
so I think that by, what's happening with the energy that's coming into the earth at this time, this high vibrational energy is helping us to tap back into that creative energy that really resides within every one of us. And by having this ability or this guidance to create whatever is flowing through us and having the freedom to do so, it sets us free in a way to stay in truth in the energy vibration that we're meant to be in. And I see that, with what you're creating, your guides are saying, okay, this is what we're tapping into. We're tapping into this energy field that this individual is and who they are. And you have the ability to be completely open to what you're receiving to create their messages.
I will tell you honestly that it hit. I acknowledge that without the Akashic Records, the ego of Roni says, you may not have been able to do this. They are the source and the support of my ability to come there. I don't think I'd be able to do it without the Akashic Records. I can put things together and design things and do different kinds of things that are crafty and artistic and so on and so forth. And they're nice, they're beautiful. I've, put them in craft shows and all that kind of thing. But the mandalas, without the stream of the Akashic Records supporting me and guiding me and giving me instruction, giving me imagery, I'm not so certain that I alone, in my physical being person ego, would go ahead and do it. And that I feel is very true for me.
Well, this is another part of the Akashic field that very few people are aware of. And that's the ability of that creation that is provided to you and me and anybody else that can tap into this energy. So you also teach how to open your
Yes,
records? Okay.
yes, I do.
Well, let's tap into that. we're gonna kind of
Okay,
shift a little. We're gonna take a little detour here from the
okay.
artistic side of you, and when we are taught to open our records, one of the exercises that we do is that create something artistically with your records closed, and then open your records and create again and what the difference is. So, because you teach this, can you explain kind of the difference in how you feel with your records closed and with your records open?
Um, I can, but I'll do it with the caveat that I've been working in the records for so long, for 30 years, that they're always present. And you probably experienced this also. I was speaking to another teacher, and we were having a little conference, and I said, I said, it's so funny because I've realized that I sort of take for granted that they're always there now. The life feels and looks and behaves differently because of them. So it's a huge scope now. But the difference is, at least in my own experience, has been, and I've also seen this happen in classes, in keeping the records closed when you're creating, there's a kind of reaching out from the head. The brain and the personality stretches out and tries to get or works at getting whatever it is that's going to come through the hand or whatever to record the creation. And that's not to say it's bad, because that's how many people work, and it can be very amazing and beautiful. But when the records are open, this is still there, but suddenly there's this movement, this expansion, and it starts spreading through you. And of course, it comes down into the heart and down through the arms and the hands and the rest of the body. And everything seems bigger, and the imagery or the color or the stroke of the hand, whatever it is broader and bigger and different. Mm-hmm. And so when your records are closed, whatever comes through may be perfectly all right, but there's that reaching that you feel, the stretching out to, okay, what am I going to do? The mentalizing, let's say. And the other way, the mentalizing sort of becomes a little piece of the whole flow, right? Because you need a little bit of the ego mental to get your hands moving and, acknowledge the whatever it is you're going to put down. But it's a much broader, bigger, more energetic experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, when I've experienced this, and we've all done it, when we were taking our classes to learn how to do this, or, later in our experiences, it's almost like something just kind of takes over. It's like you can allow the creative mind, like, okay, you have to draw this line specifically, or you have to, it's like when you're not in the record, you're focused. It's like you have to be the perfectionist. But when you're in the records, it's kind of like that focus softens. Mm-hmm. And again, and it's just this way of all of a sudden you're drawing a line in a certain way, because you're out of the thought process and you're allowing things to flow more freely, which is a good test to check, am I in my head or am I in the records, so that you can see the difference. And it's amazing how the difference can be created when you're in the Akashic field. And it's allowing itself to guide you, and you're allowing it to guide you. It's an amazing gift.
Yes, I've just received just now. It's to put a bigger metaphor on it. When the records are closed and you're creating, it's this. When the records are open and you're creating, it wells up and comes out, mm-hmm. and that's a way of describing it.
Well, and I think that, and again, I'm kind of getting off track, but I think it's important, when we're in our creative mode, but not only in the creative mode, but when we're in our everyday life. And like you mentioned, the more that we go in and out of the records and we're in that energy, it just comes in. And, we've been doing it for so long and staying in that energy that, we don't have to necessarily go through the process of opening the records in the formal way. We can just be quiet and feel the energy come to us and allow it to happen. But again, it takes time and it takes practice. But when we can figure out how to get out of our heads and allow this energy to come through us and trust it, and that we can stay in this space without questioning who or what this is and just allowing it to flow, it's amazing what we can do. It's amazing how we can live our everyday life by what I'm hearing is the word surrender, is surrendering to this. And, and I find I constantly have clients that ask, how do I get more in connection with my intuitiveness? And it's so hard for people to understand. You got to get out of your head and you have to get into this place of allowing the energy to come to you and through you and trusting it and following it. Do you have any comments about that?
Yes, I agree with that, and that is the experience of it. And the truth is, the more you surrender, allow yourself to surrender, although I would rather just say surrender, the broader and wider and deeper the beauty of the light is within you and around you and coming through you. And that is a piece of information. And so from there, you ask that intelligence to bring forward what it is that's necessary or for the highest good or whatever it is that you're using that tool for at the moment in the present time. The mandala is not a time portal. It's not the future and the past, and maybe not even the present. It's the being.
Yeah. And so give me a definition of the meaning.
Of being?
Of being. I'm sorry, being. Give me the definition of being.
Yes. It's the inner immediate presence. It's the sensation of knowing that you're the wave and the particle, the sound and the light, and that you're there in it, and that is the true existence. So there's no doubt. At that moment, there's no doubt.
So, because this is monumental to me, and this is where we're going, is finding that place of being. Just what you said. So how, and this is a very broad question, but how do you find the way, because this is a question that's asked to me a lot, how do you find the way of being in the everyday life?
It's an interesting question because I've watched, upon occasion, I've watched how that has changed for me in living my life. And coming to the present time right now, there are a lot of changes going on a daily basis. And one of the things that has come forward is holding in a space of stillness. And, people may say, well, you're waiting. No, it's not exactly that. It's holding and being in the presence and being there, just holding, and everything will happen. I understand that we're in a culture of action. And I myself like to complete things. I want to get a task done or whatever it is, which we all do on a daily basis. But there are many things that arise in life where you're saying, oh, what should I do? I've got to open the records about this. I'm not sure this and that. And I get from the masters, teachers, and loved ones a lot these days is hold. Let us do the work. Hold. And it's great. It's absolutely great. So the more that's coming in and the more it's allowed, the greater the grace and ease.
And I think you described that beautifully. And, that's exactly where we're headed, is this point of letting go of trying to control and allowing our masters, teachers, loved ones, and guides to do their job without us interfering.
Yes, right.
So to speak. What I think what the hardest thing is, for where we are and where we're going is for people to understand that letting go of control and allowing things to just be. And what I've recognized is that the more I let go of trying to control expectations, having certain ideas of what things should be like, and just being, it's like what you said, just being present and allowing the universe to do its magic. The more that I begin to recognize synchronicity, the more that I begin to understand, if I would just get out of the way, I am not always in control and I can allow that to be. And I think that part of our problem, the way that we're conditioned as humans, is we have this thing that's inside of us that we almost go into the fight or flight when we can't control something. And it is so hard for us to step back and just be. But this is the time that we're learning how to do that.
Yes. And for some of us, it's becoming more, prevalent and dominant as we're evolving very rapidly now, Lisa.
Yes, we are.
More rapidly than perhaps anyone ever expected. And we could go back to all kinds of spiritual prophecies and writings through many different kinds of cultures and so on. And we'll see that there's some similarities coming up and so on and so forth. But, we're witnessing an almost, I know that people think of it in different ways, but we are in fact witnessing a tremendously miraculous evolution.
Yes. And we are the first ones, which makes it even more interesting because we're all kind of flying by the seat of our pants and just like, oh gosh, here we go. And nobody's ever done this before. So hold on tight and walk through it. It's, it's a challenging time for many of us, but oh my gosh, like you said, it's a miraculous time as well. And, and thank you for your input and for sharing that. Do you have anything else that you want to share about this transition?
Oh my God. Well, that we will need another hour, Lisa. No. Well, it's funny. This is coming up through the records, and it has to do with some encounters I've had actually in the last few weeks, and that's how we talk to ourselves, our own mind talk. Are we in the vibration, the sacred vibration, or are we in the ego? And the more we're in the sacred vibration, if something doesn't look so good to us, that's our ego talking and saying, oh my God, this is, low, let's get away from this. But the truth of the matter is that I have been led through work in the records of always seeking the blessing and the lesson. I always look, if it's possible for me, I always look for the blessing in whatever is going on. And that may seem difficult to some people, and maybe it isn't really, but what we see in the physical is really an illusion, and the broader spectrum and energy is what holds the blessing and the beauty and the possibility and probability. The Akashic field also has probability in it. So that's where I work to take myself to with the support of the Akashic Records.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is the perfect cherry on top. But that's it. And that's the message. And that's where we're going to, is being able to shift our perspective to see the bigger, broader picture, and not staying in the way that our mind analyzes what the situation is, but to be able to step back and stand in this place of being, and allow this energy and this knowledge and this wisdom to come to us, to see and to understand that there is this bigger picture that we may not ever understand, but to be able to honor and have grace for whatever the circumstances are.
Yes, grace is really a very important element in our lives, and it is present all the time, as you know. So, the more you can invite it in, grace and ease, the more you're supported to surrender.
Mm-hmm. And then as we surrender, all unfolds exactly how it's supposed to. And so I think that I want to end that with that. Surrender.
Okay, I surrender.
And I'm with you. So I want to thank you for your beautiful gift of being able to create these incredible mandalas, and how you use the records and your guides, masters, teachers, loved ones, to help you and to assist you in your everyday life. Because this is who we're becoming, and I think you're serving as the perfect role model for individuals to see that. So thank you, and I offer you grace. And I am so grateful that I had this ability to have this conversation with you. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you so much. I am truly deeply grateful for this opportunity, and it was wonderful. I'm so appreciative, and I appreciate you. And thank you for your work. May this go on to a beautiful and ebullient existence for you. It's great. It's wonderful. I honor you.
Thank you. And hopefully that will apply to everyone that's listening.
Yes, blessings to everyone. Absolutely. Yes.
Everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you again. And thank you guys for joining us. And we'll see you next time.